So today, we're going to dive into the story of Hafiz Contractor. You've probably heard the name. He's one of India's most celebrated architects. But behind all the incredible buildings and designs, there's this really unexpected story. It's a tale of a rebellious student and a hidden treasure that, believe it or not, would end up defining his entire future. Okay, so think about it. For a guy who designs these massive, complex structures, what do you think his biggest fear would be? Maybe a building collapsing? Public speaking? Well, the real answer is something way more relatable, something that actually haunted him for years. A math test. Yep, you heard that right. He had this recurring nightmare about showing up for a math exam and knowing absolutely nothing. And this deep-seated fear, it's a direct line back to a childhood that was, let's just say, anything but conventional. To really get where that nightmare comes from, we have to rewind the clock and go back to his school days. And as you're about to see, he was a long, long way from the model student you might be picturing. You know, the funny thing is, it didn't start out that way. For the first couple of years, he was actually a good student. But then, around the third grade, something just shifted. He completely lost interest in studying, and his focus went, well, pretty much everywhere else. So, if he wasn't hitting the books, what was he doing? Oh, he was all about games. Running around, pulling pranks on people, and even copying during exams. He actually admits that he could never remember what was taught, so his strategy was to try and get the exam paper beforehand. He was definitely resourceful, just maybe not in the way his teachers were hoping for. And as you can probably guess, this kind of behavior didn't exactly go unnoticed. He says he'd get a caning, a physical punishment, pretty much every single week. It just became a regular part of his school routine. So, did the punishment even bother him? Nope, not one bit. He said his mindset was simple. You just lift up your hand, they cane you, and yeah, it hurt. But then you just had to forget about it, because he wanted to get back outside and play. The urge to play was just way stronger than any pain or fear. Now, here's what's so fascinating. While he was totally checked out of academics, he was showing these incredible skills in other areas. I mean, he was the leader of a gang, planning out their fight strategies. He even figured out how to create a distraction so his class could play core police for a full hour. And on Saturdays, he was the guy collecting money from 40 or 50 kids to go buy movie tickets. These were the very first signs of a natural-born leader and organizer. If you need one last thing to really illustrate his relationship with schoolwork, get this. His textbooks were in such perfect, pristine condition by the end of the year that other students would call dibs on them for the next year. He admits he probably only opened them the day before an exam. So this was his life, week after week. But in his 11th year of school, a single 5-minute conversation he had with his principal, well, it changed the entire course of his life. His principal called him into the office. And instead of just yelling at him, he started by saying he saw his potential. He told Hafiz flat out, "I've been watching you. You're a good student. You never study." And then the principal just lays it all out. He basically said, "Look, I've protected you up until now, but I can't do it anymore." The responsibility was now completely on Hafiz's shoulders. This was pretty much the moment he had to grow up. And finally, he brought his family into it. He reminded Hafiz that his mother had worked so incredibly hard, sacrificing to pay his school fees all those years, while he was just out playing games. He challenged him, telling him it was time to rise to the occasion. And man, those words, they really hit home. That 5-minute talk kicked off an immediate and just radical transformation. It completely changed his path from that day forward. Seriously, the change was like night and day. Before, he was the senior sports champion, the cricket captain. But that year, he says, I did not step out onto the field. His entire life, which had been packed with every game you can imagine, was suddenly boiled down to this simple, intense routine. Pray, eat, and study. That's it. So, after all that incredible effort, what was the big result? He passed his final exams with 50%. Now, I know what you're thinking. 50%? On the surface, that doesn't sound amazing, right? It's just a pass. But his principal, he saw it completely differently. He pulled Hafiz aside and said, "Son, consider yourself as having got a distinction." Because he understood the monumental journey that 50% represented. It wasn't just a score on a page. It was a symbol of a complete personal turnaround. It was a massive victory. And this really brings us to the core of the whole story, finally connecting the dots between that rebellious kid who hated school and the brilliant architect he was always meant to be. When you look back at his story, you just have to ask, right? Where were the signs? How did the boy who couldn't stand school become a leader in such a technical, creative, and demanding field?
Well, this is where it all clicks into place. The skills were there the entire time. They were just disguised. Planning those gang fights, that was project management and leadership. Creating distractions to play chore police, that's all about spatial awareness and design. And collecting all that movie ticket money, that was basically a lesson in budgeting. His prants were just his own very unconventional training ground.
He also came to understand that his brain was just wired differently. He had this amazing photographic memory. He could remember things visually, like a picture, instead of through abstract ideas. And that visual intelligence, which maybe wasn't so valued in a regular classroom, is the exact skill that makes a phenomenal architect. Ultimately, the story of Hafiz Contractor really challenges us to look beyond the usual ways we measure success. It's such a powerful reminder that our real talents, our true gifts, might not show up on a report card. So it leaves us with a pretty big question. What hidden treasures are we overlooking in other people, and maybe even in ourselves?